This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
No winner yet. The U.S. and the world awaits results of the presidential elections. Ethiopia's parliament approves a state of emergency in Tigray a day after Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered troops into the region. And 5 Congolese soldiers have been killed and several others injured in clashes with a rebel group in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Hello and welcome to Africa Live. As always, great to have you with us. I'm Richard Ntal, live in Nairobi. And for those of you joining us from across the continent and around the globe, we thank you for joining us. And tonight I'm alongside my colleague Uche, who has our business headlines. Uche.
Thank you, Richard. And here's a look at what's coming up on Africa Live Biz. Canadian miner Barrick Gold posts a near threefold jump in its quarterly profit and increases its dividend. And South Africa's Comair is set to hit the skies after being grounded since March. Of course, all that coming up within the program. For now, it is back to you, Richard.
Thank you so much, Uche. Once again, welcome to Africa Live. I'm Richard Ntal. So good to have you with us. Well, vote counting continues in the United States presidential election. According to the Associated Press, in battleground state Georgia, 98% of the votes have been counted. President Donald Trump's lead over Joe Biden has narrowed there. Georgia has 16 electoral votes. The AP projections show Joe Biden has 264 electoral votes, just 6 short of the 270 he needs to win, while President Donald Trump has 214. Trump is already taking legal action to temporarily stop counting in several key states. Now, his lawyers are challenging the vote counts in Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. They're also asking the U.S. Supreme Court to intervene in mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania, where the race is just too close to call. Trump is demanding a recount in Wisconsin, a key battleground state that the AP says Joe Biden has won, but the state's election officials are defending the integrity of the vote. Meanwhile, Biden is trying to project a calm demeanor, saying every vote must be counted, while he voices confidence he will eventually win.
After a long night of counting, it's clear that we're winning enough states to reach 270 electoral votes needed to win the presidency. I'm not here to declare that we've won, but I am here to report that when the count is finished, we believe we will be the winners.
Well, Facebook and Twitter have flagged multiple posts by President Trump for falsely claiming victory and pushing unfounded allegations about vote counting. He's accusing Democrats without any evidence of trying to steal the election. Twitter labeled his tweets as, quote, misleading and limited how they could be shared and seen. Facebook reminded the public that no winner had been announced. Now, in the latest development, U.S. media is reporting that the Trump campaign is also going to file a lawsuit in Nevada. Our White House correspondent Nathan King walks us through the timeline between now and when the next president will be inaugurated.
In the battle for the White House, the US electorate and the world usually knows the results on election night, or at least the day after. But unlike other democracies, the US president isn't actually sworn in to office until 11 weeks later. Now, normally this goes unnoticed. This period between election day and inauguration day, however, a lot happens behind the scenes. And in an election which is close or disputed, this whole period can be vital. Despite all the recent rhetoric, ballot counting often continues past polling day. Many states take weeks to count absentee ballots, more mail-in ballots this year, of course, military ballots, and people who live overseas. Now, this gives time for a lot of legal challenges. First of all, locally, then sometimes if they're disputed up to the state level, and in the case of the election of 2000, for example, it can end up here, all the way to the United States Supreme Court. Depending on the state, the count can go on for another 6 weeks. You've got to remember that these electoral college votes we see actually are represented by real people. They're called the electors. And they basically all across the United States give their vote for president and vice president on December the 14th. And then the next key date is January the 6th. That's when the US Congress meets to declare the official results of the election. A rare joint session of Congress, the newly elected Congress people along with the sitting vice president, that would be Mike Pence, officially giving their stamp of approval on the Electoral College results. Then, if all goes according to plan, it moves smoothly to the inauguration of the new president and vice president on January the 20th. But there can be obstacles. It's rare, but sometimes the Electoral College can be deadlocked. And if the electors and Congress can't work out who should be president and vice president by inauguration day, then an obscure law, never used before in the history of the United States, can come into play, which could make the Speaker of the House, currently Nancy Pelosi, the Democrat, the President of the United States. However, it is worth stressing that generally elections in the United States go pretty smoothly, considering the size of the electorate and the diversity in the country. It can be a very energizing time for one of the world's oldest democracies. But let's face it, we are living in very divided times. This 11-week gap between election day and inauguration day, if there's lots of legal disputes and questions about the election, could lead to demonstrations, more divisiveness in the population, even violence. It could be very dangerous indeed. Remember, 4 years ago, anger erupted in 2016 as President Trump won the election but lost the popular vote by nearly 3 million votes. And in a bid for his second term, Trump has questioned the ballot counting process and has refused to guarantee he will accept the result and would not repudiate violent white supremacists. Of course, this election has been complicated by the pandemic, the huge rise of mail-in voting, and of course, early voting as well. Legal challenges could give way to demonstrations. There could also be violence as well. US institutions and its electoral process are really going to face a big test. Nathan King, CGTN, Washington.
All right, let's now get more from Toby Muse in Washington, D.C. Toby, welcome to Africa Live. As always, it's great talking to you. Toby, first and foremost, the vote counting is still ongoing in several swing states. Tell us more about that. But I guess the question we'd all like to know is, why is it taking so long to complete the count? Toby.
Indeed. So where are we at the moment? We're waiting for we're looking at the vote count in Nevada. We're hoping to get some results from them possibly in the coming hours. Joe Biden has a tiny lead there, less than 10,000 votes. That's 6 electoral college votes. Georgia, a solidly conservative state in the past, now just too close to a call. We're in the final tens of thousands of votes to be counted there. It's very, very close. Joe Biden has been biting into Donald Trump's lead. Arizona, it's the reverse. Joe Biden is ahead, but Donald Trump has been biting into his lead. And then we come to the big one, Pennsylvania. If Pennsylvania is to be awarded to Joe Biden, it ends this election. Joe Biden is the next president. Pennsylvania is that important. And that's where we get to the second part of your question. Why is this taking so long? Well, it could have been prevented in the case of Pennsylvania. Everybody knew this was going to be an unprecedented amount of mail-in ballots, security protocol to minimize the spread of the coronavirus. Many states across the country adapted to that. They started counting votes when they received them before election day. Pennsylvania, well aware it could be the center of this election campaign, did not change its rules. That means for weeks they were receiving post-in votes and they didn't start counting them until election day. So now we're on day 2 after the election. We still don't have a result. And I think that is the kind of thing that can damage people's trust. Now, many people were prepared for this, but when you speak to the supporters of the president, you will hear these things where they start talking about, is this the fraud that the president keeps talking about? It's important to note that there's very, very, very few cases of mail-in vote fraud, but the president has been banging this drum for so long, saying that mail-in votes are open to fraud. Democrats, of course, say, no, this is the process. We need to count all of these votes.
Well, Toby, clearly the United States is a divided country right now. There have been protests taking place all across the country. What's the latest on that, Toby?
Absolutely. So we have seen these incidents when you look at somewhere like Detroit. There's video of someone in the room with the people who are counting these votes, and someone starts shouting, "Stop counting the votes." There's another incident where heavily armed men turned up to one of the places where they were counting votes in Arizona. What was their intention? To turn up to civilians counting votes with machine guns? We can guess it was to intimidate. I mean, they would have to give their own reason for why they felt the need to take a heavy machine gun to civilians counting votes. But that's been the kind of fear here. But I will say that there's been less of those incidents of violence than we really we feared. When we came into this election, everybody you would speak to would say, I fear we're going to see violence on election day and in the days past, and it hasn't actually happened so far. But again, we do not have a final result. How long is it going to take to have a final result? We don't know. We hope that we get a final result of this election soon, but we just don't know. So, you know, it's not over until it's over.
That's right, Toby. Once again, thank you for that great update and report. The world awaits the final results. Toby Muse speaking to us live from the United States. Thanks a lot, Toby. Now, moving on, the United Nations says it will continue to uphold the Paris climate deal. The announcement comes on the same day as the United States formally withdrew from the 2015 agreement. A UN spokesperson says the organization regrets America's decision.
Secretary General will co-convene on December 12th a climate ambition summit, which will coincide with the 5th anniversary of the Paris agreement. And so our support, our belief in the need for a strong and active Paris agreement remains unchanged. And I think I would refer you back to what the Secretary General said, I think back in November a year ago, about the U.S. decision.
Well, under the Paris Agreement, countries pledged to take action to limit global warming. The U.S. is the world's second largest greenhouse gas emitter, and its withdrawal from the global pact has raised concerns. Several countries have expressed regret over America's withdrawal. Trump's Democratic rival Joe Biden has promised to rejoin the agreement if elected. Ethiopia's parliament has endorsed a 6-month state of emergency for the Tigray region. This means a decree first announced by the Council of Ministers has become law. In September, the Tigray local government held regional elections, which the federal government deemed illegal. In recent days, tensions have escalated, with the Tigray People's Liberation Front being accused of attempting to loot a military base. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed has since ordered a military response to the attack. 5 Congolese soldiers have been killed and several others injured in clashes with a rebel group. The attack took place in the northeast of the Democratic Republic of Congo. A senior officer was among the victims of the attack in Ituri province. CGTN's Chris Ochemringa has more from Kinshasa.
The soldiers were killed by suspected rebels in an attack on their military base in Ezekere. The military spokesperson in Ituri province says an officer at the rank of a major was one of the victims of the attack. He says the army fought the rebels and repelled them from the area. Congolese officials have blamed the attack on the Cooperative for the Development of Congo rebel group Codeco. The group is composed of fighters from the Lendu community. They've had long-standing conflicts over land and the control of mineral resources with members of a community of herders known as the Hema. The security situation in Ituri province has deteriorated since the start of this year. The UN says more than 1,300 people have been killed and over 200,000 displaced. Chris Ochemringa, CGTN, Kinshasa, Democratic Republic of Congo.
Tanzanian President John Magufuli has been sworn in for his second term in office. Magufuli won a landslide victory after garnering 84% of the vote. Several leaders, including Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa and Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni, attended the swearing-in ceremony. In his address to the nation, Magufuli pledged to make Tanzania an economically independent country. He promised to achieve this goal by working together with all Tanzanians, regardless of their tribal, religious, or political beliefs. We have a lot more coming your way. Stay tuned. This is Africa Live. Here's a look at what's ahead. Chinese President Xi Jinping calls for cooperation in world economy's recovery bid. Kenya's home to the world's only remaining 2 northern white rhinos. It sees tourism pick up after COVID-19.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Syria,
Juba,
Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. You've got to get out, go there, and you'll find them. In the bazaars of Casablanca, among the crowds in Cairo,
who come to visit Cairo, the ancient capital of Egypt.
along the waters of the Nile, along the sands of the Sahara. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. No one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back to Africa Live. Thanks for staying with us. Now to the annual China International Import Expo, which is underway in Shanghai. President Xi Jinping spoke at the opening ceremony, calling on countries to build an open, inclusive, and balanced economy. This year's expo features 6 main sections. They cover food and farm products, cars, smart devices, consumer goods, medical equipment, and healthcare, as well as other services. Now, the event has attracted around 400,000 buyers and more than 110,000 companies and organizations. Li Jingyi has more.
Chinese President Xi calls on all countries to learn from the pandemic and promote opening up for win-win cooperation.
The pandemic reminds us that all countries are a community with a shared future, and no one can stand alone in the face of major crises. We must adhere to the concept of win-win cooperation, prioritize the common interests of all countries, and promote economic globalization in a more open, inclusive, balanced, and win-win way.
The week-long event provides a window for recognition of foreign products and gives domestic consumers more choices. President Xi said over the next 10 years, China's import volume for goods and products could exceed $22 trillion.
China is a huge market with the greatest potential in the world. Made in China has become an important concept in the global industrial supply chain and has made positive contributions. China's vast domestic market will continue to stimulate its potential for innovation.
President Xi said going forward, China will continue to improve its business environment, boost innovation, and deepen bilateral and multilateral cooperations with countries in the rest of the world. Li Jingyi, CGTN.
Well, following President Xi's speech, CGTN got reactions from exhibitors.
We were so impressed about President Xi's speech yesterday. It sent an important signal to the world that China will open its market widely. As a German company in China, we have benefited a lot from China's opening up. We will expand our investment here, especially in research and development. We have great confidence in the Chinese market.
China has become the most important market for us. We have just invested $150 million in China. Next year, we'll land our biggest overseas headquarters in Shanghai, which will be a good opportunity for investors.
And we find this a very good venue to introduce our imported products. We have a factory in China where we're producing already, but we still import a lot of machines. And this is a very good event here to show the imported products.
I think the Chinese market is the first market that really opened up. So I really think that the Chinese government had the pandemic well under control. So it was the first. They did a very hard lockdown at the beginning, especially in Wuhan. And afterwards, they found a way how to open up the economy. And now you see the results. The Chinese economy is the strongest one at the moment. It's the first one that opened up. And we are almost back to normal now.
The third China International Import Expo has kicked off in Shanghai. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa expressed his appreciation to China for holding the event. He also touched on the importance of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, which is 2 months away from being launched.
The number of international companies participating this year is higher than in previous years, further conveying China's commitment to inclusive globalization. For the African continent, this could not have come at a better time. We are just 2 months away from the first trading date of the African Continental Free Trade Area. This free trade area will be the largest trade area in the world. It will boost regional trade, reconfigure continental supply chains on the African continent, and spur economic growth in a number of countries in Africa.
Well, earlier we spoke to Gerishan Ikiara, a senior lecturer at the University of Nairobi's Institute of Diplomacy and International Studies. He touched on the state of China's and Africa's trading relationship in the face of COVID-19. Let's take a listen.
Africa in the last 6-7 months has been going through one of its worst pandemics and crises, both in human area as well as in the economy. And it requires a lot of assistance to be able to get out of the crisis in which it is today, in terms of rising unemployment for both the young and the old people, being unable to access some of the supply chains, which are very critical. And China, for instance, has been a very important supply chain for many African countries, for both the big companies as well as small and medium enterprises. So yes, Africa needs a lot of assistance, and Africa has been cooperating very well with China, especially through FOCAC, which in the last 15 years has strengthened the economic, social, and even political relationships between China and literally all African countries. So China can play a major part. It has already played quite an important part. Before the pandemic, China had become the leading market for Africa in both export and import, very crucial for industries in Africa. So opening up China, opening the economy, the Chinese economy, will be one way of assisting Africa greatly, and enabling both export and imports to flow freely between the two continents. The shutdown, especially in the freight, the disruption of the freight all over the world, was a major problem, and we are hoping that if we are able to control the coronavirus and that the aeroplanes start operating freely, this will be an important way of enabling Africa to cooperate more strongly with China. Already substantial progress has been made in linking China and Africa through the standard gauge railways in quite a number of African countries. And this has facilitated a more efficient trade between China and Africa and the rest of the world. So, but this effort to have Belt and Road program has not reached many African countries. First of all, it is fairly expensive, and it will be good if China is able to extend the Belt and Road facility beyond where it is at the moment.
Well, let's now turn to Mauritius, where the cleanup of a massive oil spill is set to end by January. This is according to the owner of the Japanese MV Wakashio ship, which ran aground in July. The ship then spilled roughly 1,000 tons of oil. The affected area is home to endangered coral reefs and other marine life. Scientists call the spill the island's worst ecological disaster. The ship's owner stated that all the oil floating in the ocean has since been cleaned up. Well, moving from the continent now, we're learning more about the victims of this week's terrorist attack in Vienna. Officials say one of the 4 people killed was a Chinese-Austrian restaurateur. Johannes Pleschberger has more.
I am here at Vienna's Schwedenplatz Square, one of the sites where Monday's deadly shootings took place. Among the victims was the Austrian-Chinese owner of this Asian restaurant. He died from the serious injuries caused by the gunman. The consul of the Chinese embassy in Austria said,
"We are deeply shocked by what happened. We have expressed our deepest condolences to the deceased and the injured and their families."
The embassy identified the Chinese-Austrian victim as Li Chang. The 39-year-old had moved from southern China to Austria over 25 years ago. Through hard work, he slowly created 2 restaurant businesses. We met one of his friends, Yi Dong-o, a Korean restaurant owner. When we arrived, Yi was just receiving the tragic news from Li Chang's first wife on the phone.
Ist mein Freund. Ja.
Ja, Mama ist tot.
Oh.
After hearing about his friend's passing, Yi Dong-o tells us more about Li Chang, who also leaves behind his current girlfriend.
Aber sie kommt aus Nordchina und kommt eigentlich südliche China.
She comes from North China and he comes from South China. He keeps saying, "We don't fit together. We always argue because I'm from the south and she is from the north." But he was a very nice person. We met almost every day. Yes, every day. I know his business turnover and he knows my turnover.
Wir treffen uns fast jeden Tag. Ja, jeden Tag treffen wir uns.
Yi Dong-o was in his restaurant when the terror attack happened, right outside his windows. He says he saw at least one killer.
He went down like this with his gun, and that's why I was scared.
Yi Dong-o heard several shots and advised his restaurant guests to hide in the kitchen. After the incident, he was questioned by the police about what he had witnessed. The Austrian authorities are continuing the search for accomplices of the gunman. This has led them to Switzerland, where 2 suspects have been arrested. Johannes Pleschberger, CGTN, Vienna.
Coming back to the continent now, Africa's tourism sector is still feeling the pinch of the coronavirus pandemic. The Old Pajeta Conservancy in Kenya is home to the world's remaining 2 northern white rhinos, a sanctuary for over 100 critically ill endangered animals. Now, the Conservancy may have gone through tough times over the past 7 months, but it says its activities are now slowly picking up. CGTN's Nick Mundima visited the Conservancy and now reports.
The Old Pajeta Conservancy, one of the leading tourist destinations in Africa. It's also home to some endangered species, including the northern and southern white rhinos. Here, things are picking up slowly, but normalcy is yet to be achieved. Most visitors come from European countries, some of which are experiencing a second wave of coronavirus infections.
From where we are, things have become very difficult. It's all about surviving. We haven't been able to go back to our usual operations.
The fact that we are an integrated model, we embrace the use of various practices and land use plans that help us generate revenue from a number of diverse sources, has helped us survive, has been a major bridging between the downturn in tourism business.
Few tourists can be seen here. This unusual scenario, which is also evident in other parks and sanctuaries, is bad news for the economy. It has also led to an increase in poaching. However, more locals are visiting such attractions more often.
Let Africa work more towards local tourism, because in this COVID period we realized that we were so reliant on international tourists that I feel we can really do wonders with local tourism.
The Kenyan government believes the dream of making Africa a single tourist hub is still achievable, and that it will help the continent become more self-reliant in tourism.
Africa needs to appreciate that there is already a market of almost 1 billion people in the continent that they can come and travel within each other. So we need to work on the logistics of making it happen. One, we need to open our borders to Africans. So in terms of visas and accessibility to the country. We need to open up our airspace to airlines across Africa, and that's going to work.
At the moment, though, most industry stakeholders are focused on the more immediate task of surviving the aftermath of the coronavirus pandemic. Many African countries are depending on local tourism at the moment before things get back to normal. Other European countries have gone back to lockdown to control the spread of the virus, but in many African states, this is the situation. Things are not actually back to factory settings, hoping that soon most of these governments will reduce the entry fees to such parks, like here at the Olpejita Conservancy. Nick Mudimba, CGTN, Laikipia County, Kenya.
Our coverage continues on Africa Live. Time now for our business segment with Uche.
Thanks, Richard. And coming up on Africa Live Biz. Canadian miner Barrick Gold posts a near threefold jump in quarterly profit and increases its dividend. And South Africa's Comair is set to hit the skies after being grounded in March.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Now, Canadian miner Barrick Gold has posted a near threefold jump in quarterly profit and increased its dividend. The firm is benefiting from a surge in gold prices, which was fueled by widespread coronavirus stimulus measures unveiled globally. Now, higher prices of precious metals, including gold, surged to a record high above $2,000 an ounce earlier this year. That has offered miners a lifeline after the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted supply chains and mining operations. Barrick says average realized gold prices rose to $1,926 per ounce in the third quarter ending September 30th, and that is up from $1,476 per ounce a year earlier. Meanwhile, Libya's daily crude output has climbed to 800,000 barrels per day, and the country is now targeting 1.3 million barrels by early next year. The reopening of the last of Libya's oil fields and ports has prompted a resurgence of its energy industry, with the OPEC nation's daily production jumping from less than 100,000 barrels in September. Now here's CGTN's Yasser Hakim with the details.
Reaping the rewards of peace and stability, 800,000 barrels daily production is an 8-fold increase since a ceasefire took hold over a month ago. According to the chairman of Libya's state-run National Oil Corporation, Mustafa Sanallah, the North African nation is targeting to pump 1 million barrels daily next month, before accelerating to over 1.6 million barrels daily by the end of 2021.
Libya's daily production reached 1.3 million barrels per day in 2018, and it could easily achieve over 1.5 million barrels on one condition. That's if peaceful negotiations and ceasefire continues. A military conflict will halt production, just like what happened throughout 2020, and this can further damage the economy.
Libya's current oil revenue exceeds $12 billion. Half of it is paid as salaries to state employees. About $2 billion goes to the rival Tobruk government in the east, and the rest to the National Accord government and the state budget. Officials, however, say the income is not enough to cover its budgetary needs or the state's expenses.
Unfortunately, one of the big mistakes of Muammar Gaddafi is that he made the country dependent only on oil revenue, yet it has a lot of potential in tourism, for example. Also, Libya oversees 2,000 kilometers of seashore. This could create a huge fishing industry that could garner billions for the country. Good use of its seaports could make it a regional trading hub in North Africa like Egypt. There is a lot of revenue sources to create.
Analysts are hopeful that the political rivals will broker a permanent peace deal to allow more oil production. The country with the largest oil reserves in Africa will need the extra revenue to jumpstart its rebuilding process after a decade of internal fighting. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Now, Comair, the aviation company that runs the South African franchise of British Airways and low-cost airline Kulula.com, looks set to fly again. The company grounded flights in March when South Africa went into lockdown. 2 months later, Comair has filed for business rescue. And as Sumitra Naidu now reports, Comair has managed to clear a few hurdles and could take to the skies as early as next month.
Comair wants to get British Airways and Kulula.com back in the air as soon as possible. But this may happen under a new parent. Comair executives formed a company called Bitco, which will buy the airlines. The Competition Commission gave the acquisition the green light on condition there will be no retrenchments once the airlines are flying again.
I think it's extremely interesting that effectively the Competitions Board has approved essentially the takeover by the new company of old people on the condition that jobs are protected. It shows that both the management and obviously the authorities are being extremely sensitive to the needs of organised union.
But 400 employees will be retrenched under the current restructuring. The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa says there wasn't enough consultation.
We would prefer a situation where we do not have to go to the Labour Court. We say that we think that they are not actually trying hard enough to find an amicable solution that does not involve us resorting to court action. We want meaningful engagement.
Comair says additional black economic empowerment partners have agreed to take part in the business rescue process, but provided little details as to who they are. The two airlines might get back in the air soon, but their survival will be tricky. For South Africans, international travel hasn't opened up completely as yet. There are also worries around what another possible lockdown could do to this industry.
The airline is still entirely dependent upon domestic air travel, and that means that it's incredibly useful link in with British Airways is not going to be really of much use to it at all. And at the same time, we're expecting Gidon Novick, the original founder of Kulula, to launch his new airline. We now know it's called Lift, effectively from the 1st of December. So that's going to make the competition even tougher.
SAA is also expected to start flying again after government extended yet another loan to help save the airline. The competition will be good news for consumers, but it may just be unsustainable for operators. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
And still in South Africa, infrastructure development is key to the country's economic recovery. That is according to President Cyril Ramaphosa, who was speaking at the Infrastructure Preparation Roundtable in Midrand. He says there's a plan to unlock $60 billion for infrastructure development, and that the identified infrastructure projects will help to create jobs in the country. Here's CGTN's Yolisa Njamela with more.
South Africa is due to roll out a big infrastructure spending program and large-scale employment stimulus to revive the economy.
The country will be embarking on this under the auspices of the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan. The plan outlines an aggressive infrastructure program and far-reaching reforms to increase competitiveness and inclusiveness. It also includes measures to catalyze industrialization, relief for vulnerable households and individuals, and a public investment in employment programs.
The infrastructure investment plan not only speaks to new infrastructure, but also to maintenance and repairs of existing infrastructure, as well as urban management, the cleaning of our towns and cities and rural areas. This project pipeline also very importantly addresses social, economic, spatial, and environmental injustices of the past.
This plan, which is underpinned by the agreements between social partners, outlines key interventions to kickstart the country's economy. Among other things, the plan will prioritize economic reforms to unlock investment and growth, to fight corruption and crime, improve the capability of the state, and create jobs through mass public employment programs.
We are also committed to creating an enabling environment by doing what is essential, what the investment community would like to see, in doing things such as fighting corruption and fighting crime. We have to do this if we intend also to industrialize our country, and in doing so, to also create an enabling environment for the growth of small, medium enterprises.
Government has already identified almost 300 projects with a total investment value of at least 1 trillion rand or $60 billion. The projects were chosen because of their multiplier effect and job elasticity.
The projects are in the areas of water and sanitation, energy, transport, digital infrastructure, agriculture and agro-processing, and human settlements. And each of these areas is vital for the rejuvenation of our economy, reducing the costs of doing business, and improving our country's competitiveness.
South Africa's economy remains in tatters. The COVID-19 pandemic has worsened its situation. The Infrastructure Development Plan is one of the key interventions being made by government to revive the economy. Yolisa Njamela for CGTN in Midrand, South Africa.
And to some international news now, the Bank of England has increased its already huge bond buying stimulus by a larger than expected $195 billion as it braces for more economic damage from the new coronavirus lockdowns and, of course, the Brexit. Now, the bank says it is still looking into the pros and cons of taking interest rates negative, but it gave no update on the process. Governor Andrew Bailey says the bank forecasts that the UK economy will not return to pre-pandemic levels until the beginning of 2022 at the earliest. Bailey also says the economy is set to shrink by a record 11% in 2020 overall, and that is more than the 9.5% it had forecast in March. Now, on Thursday, England began a 4-week lockdown to curb a second wave of COVID-19 that has led to a rising number of deaths in the country.
Well, our objective, of course, is to set a cost of borrowing in the economy as a whole that is consistent with activity and the inflation target. Now, it's necessary and inevitable in my view that at the moment the major borrower in the economy is the government, because it's the government that has to step in and respond with public policy to an unprecedented health crisis. So it works through that channel. We always condition our forecasts on what are government policies and government intentions, and that is that there is a trade agreement. Now, any trade agreement now will have a degree of adjustment to it.
And that's all for now on Africa Live Biz, but still to come on Global Business Africa, we'll be bringing you more analysis of the race to the White House as, of course, Joe Biden inches closer to victory. All that coming up top of the hour, but in the meantime, my colleague Richard Nta will be back with more news after this short break.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us. Let's now head to South Africa, where the two cities of Pretoria and Johannesburg are basking in purple. These are the colors of jacaranda trees that blossom at this time of the year. Many are now out and taking photos as they enjoy the moment.
It is that time of the year when thousands of jacaranda trees paint Johannesburg and Pretoria purple. For residents, it is time to take those unique photos that capture the memories of the season.
There's something about jacarandas, like Johannesburg and Pretoria, they just have this burst of colour. And, you know, we have very green cities as far as trees go, but just to see the purple for a couple of months a year, and it's always the hunt for the elusive photo. It's like, you know, where's the best photo you can get? And it's all about trying to capture the beauty for a couple of weeks and, you know, see the city in a different light.
It's just the jacarandas are beautiful. They bring that purple punch, as I said. You know, it brings a little bit of punch of colors to the image, and it's very attractive to the eye.
According to residents of the two cities, the purple petals give those iconic images of Pretoria and Johannesburg.
I think the relationship between Johannesburg and Pretoria is quite a strange one. As cities that are actually so close to each other and are almost there's almost very little difference as you're traveling the landscape from one city to the next. They're almost joined to each other. And yet, if you come from Pretoria, you see yourself as a very different identity. And I think it's interesting linking up cities in that way and not being so city-centric. So I think it's also just, as I say, creating different pathways, different ways of seeing. Cape Town's always credited in South Africa as being the most beautiful city to visit. So for 1 month, we like to challenge that title with something fresh.
The cities even organize photography competitions called Jacaranda in Your Pocket. Prizes include holiday safaris to Pretoria and other local cities.
Yeah, well, we're hoping that this year we'll get a much greater crop of entries because we've expanded to 2 cities. But as a city guide to Joburg, we really feel really strongly about opening access to cities, and it's something that we try and do in all the work that we do, is to help people navigate cities. And this is so much about creating a different route, a different kind of itinerary, but using nature as your marker or as your placemaker.
The dream of winning and the thrill of being part of this social phenomenon has many participants clicking away on their cameras. Wanja Mungai, CGTN.
And we're not done just yet. We've got your sports news coming up after the break. Don't go away. Here's a look at what's ahead. Zamalek set up historic Cairo derby final against Al Ahly in the CAF Champions League.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome into Sport on Africa Live. Let's talk a bit of football. We start in Egypt, where a stunning 4-1 victory on aggregate by Zamalek over Moroccan champions Raja Casablanca set up the White Knights for a dream Cairo derby finals against crosstown bitter rivals Al Ahly in the CAF Champions League. It will be the first time in history of the competition that the two Egyptian teams will vie for the coveted trophy. CGTN's Adel Al-Mahroui has more.
Up until the 60th minute, Moroccan giants Raja Casablanca seemed to have the advantage with a 1-0 lead against Zamalek. This was in their delayed second leg of their CAF Champions League semi-final, a fixture postponed twice due to the pandemic. But a minute later, Tunisian star Fergani Sessi rescued the White Knights with his equalizer for the Cairo Giants to set a grandstand finish. And what a finish it was! Mustafa Mohamed scored twice in 3 minutes, booking the Egyptians their ticket to the CAF Champions League final, 4-1 on aggregate.
Zamalek's 1-0 victory in Morocco gave them confidence during the home game, yet they were surprised that the Raja players were very strong. This is not a team sick with COVID-19. Zamalek managed to realign their positions in the second half and proved it was a stronger team.
Zamalek's victory has made history. Their opponents in the final are none other than crosstown rivals Al Ahly. This will be the first ever Cairo Derby final. No two other Egyptian teams have ever made it that far before.
This gives both teams a great incentive to exert their utmost effort. They will want to win the title from their traditional rival. They know history will remember this match, and it will be an honor for the winner to take the title in the first Egyptian final.
The final will be played in Burj Al Arab International Stadium in Alexandria City on the 27th November without fans. However, that will not dampen the sense of occasion.
I wished Zamalek reached the final, not Raja. Moroccan teams are much harder on us to read, but Zamalek is like an open book. They play similar football. It's just unfortunate that the match will be played without fans.
Zamalek will be aiming for its 6th title to consolidate its position as the second most decorated team in the CAF Champions League. Across the city divide, new coach Pitsu Mosemani and Al Ahly will be seeking a record-extending 9th trophy. Having been outclassed by Zamalek in recent Cairo derbies, revenge is also on the menu. In either way, Egypt wins. The North African football giant will have 16 CAF Champions League trophies, 10 titles more than Tunisia, Morocco and DR Congo. Adel Al-Mahroui, CGTN, Cairo.
And to rugby now, and the South African Rugby Union has welcomed the announcement by the Sanzar that the men in green and gold will be part of their 4-nation tournament for the foreseeable future, besides committing to play in the Southern Hemisphere. Now, this is despite the world champion Springboks' decision to be part of the European Pro 14 competition next year. CGTN's C.S. Duplessis has more.
The news has brought an end to any speculation that the reigning world champions will be heading north to play their international rugby as a part of an expanded 6 nations, and underlies their commitment to find a way to assist in taking rugby in a new progressive direction.
No, I think the rugby championship is very important. You know, it's synonymous with rugby. You know, in South Africa, it's a big part of the tradition. As a young player, you look forward to playing for the Springboks and facing the All Blacks. You know, so for that to be taken away, I think that will just leave a big void. So I'm glad that the championship is going to be back in a massive way next year.
Championship's been an exciting tournament for a long time. Been a difficult one for us to win, with the amount of travel that South Africans have had to do. So we've got very few victories in a very long period of the championship. And I guess that's the nature of the competition. You're playing against top sides every weekend.
The Rugby Championship will be restructured to include a 12-match format with teams playing each other on a home or away basis. SA Rugby has welcomed the refreshed approach and believe it is a step in the right direction in redeveloping rugby in the Southern Hemisphere.
We must remember that South African rugby was an architect of SANZA, and we committed to SANZA. We were fortunate because we had our foot in both hemispheres, and we said we tended to hedge our bets, and I think our move for next year is good for our player welfare. It'll be good for our game, but I also think it's good for that we continue playing against All Blacks. You know, if you want to be up there, you need to play against good competition, and the All Blacks and the Aussies provide that competition and keeps us on the toes and keeps them on their toes. So I think that partnership does work for us.
The iconic FNB Stadium is where the much-anticipated first test between the Springboks and the British and Irish Lions will take place on July the 24th next year, and could well be the first time since their World Cup triumph in 2019 that the public will get to see the men in green and gold in action. The excitement is already tangible as the appetite for rugby in the Rainbow Nation is at an all-time high, and now with a deal in place to remain in the Rugby Championship, rugby fans who have been dealing with a rugby famine will now be in for a real feast in 2021. CS du Plessis, CGTN, Johannesburg.
And in more football news, Manchester United